In the year 636, Abu Ubayda ibn al-Jarrah stood before the only remaining garrison of the Byzantine army in the city of Bosra, with a force of 3,000 men, while 200,000 Byzantine troops awaited them in the north. The city was the key to Syria, and the fate of the Muslim advance hung in the balance. If Abu Ubayda failed, the entire campaign could collapse, and the Muslim presence in Syria would be erased. The Byzantine forces had fortified the city, confident in their superior numbers and strong defenses. The Muslims were outnumbered, but Abu Ubayda was known for his strategic brilliance and unwavering faith. As Ibn al-Athir recorded, Abu Ubayda knew that a direct assault would lead to disaster. He needed a plan that would allow his smaller force to overcome the Byzantine numbers. His solution was both bold and ingenious. He divided his army into 3 groups. The first group, led by Amr ibn al-As, was to create a diversion by attacking the back of the city, drawing the Byzantine forces away from the main gate. The second group, under the command of Khalid ibn al-Walid, would launch a surprise attack from the front, crushing the weakened Byzantine defenses. The third group, under Abu Ubayda's personal command, would wait in reserve, ready to exploit any breaches in the city's defenses. The plan was risky, but Abu Ubayda's faith in Allah and his trust in his commanders gave him confidence. As Al-Tabari noted, he knew that victory was not merely a matter of numbers, but of strategy, courage, and divine support. The attack began at dawn, with Amr ibn al-Az's forces engaging the Byzantines from the rear. The Byzantines, taken by surprise, scrambled to respond, thinning their defenses at the front gate. Khalid ibn al-Walid seized the moment, leading his forces in a relentless assault that shattered the Byzantine lines. The city's defenders, caught between 2 overwhelming forces, began to retreat. Abu Ubayda then led his reserve into the city, securing it before the Byzantines could regroup. But the victory was not without its challenges. As the battle raged, news reached Abu Ubayda that a larger Byzantine army was on its way to reinforce the garrison. The city of Bosra was now secure, but the larger threat loomed on the horizon. The Byzantine forces, though defeated, were far from broken. Abu Ubayda knew that he had to act quickly to prevent them from regrouping and launching a counterattack. His decision to hold the city and prepare for the coming confrontation was a testament to his foresight and leadership. The Byzantines, however, were not idle. They had learned from their defeat and were determined to avenge it. A new army, even larger than the last, was already marching toward Bosra. Abu Ubayda's forces were exhausted from the battle, but he knew that rest was a luxury they could not afford. He had to prepare his men for the next battle, knowing that the fate of Syria still hung in the balance. Chapter 2: 12,000 Muslim warriors stood against the might of the Persian Empire, a force so vast its numbers were counted in hundreds of thousands. This was not a skirmish. This was the Battle of al-Qadisiyyah, a clash that would decide the fate of Iraq and shape the future of the Ummah. The question was not if the Muslims would face overwhelming odds, but how they would respond when the fate of the region hung in the balance. The Persians, confident in their superior numbers and the strength of their fortifications, believed victory was inevitable. They had built a massive wall, 40 miles long, to defend the city of al-Madarin, their imperial capital. The Muslims, led by Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, may Allah be pleased with him, faced a daunting task. They were outnumbered, outarmed, and faced an enemy that had dominated the region for centuries. The stakes were clear. Failure here would mean the retreat of the Muslim forces and the preservation of Persian rule. As Ibn al-Athir recorded in Al-Kamil fi al-Tarikh, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas chose a bold strategy. He divided his forces into 5 corps, each led by a capable commander. Al-Kaka ibn Amr, Hashim ibn Utbah, Shurabil ibn Hassana, Mimr ibn al-Muthana, and Abu Ubayda ibn al-Jarrah, may Allah be pleased with him. Each commander was given specific instructions and a designated position on the battlefield. Sa'd's plan was to engage the Persians in a series of coordinated attacks, exploiting their lack of unity and their overconfidence. The Persian commander, Rostam Farrakhzad, underestimation of the Muslims proved to be his downfall. As al-Tabari reported in his Tarikh al-Rusul wa al-Muluk, Rostam believed the Muslims were a disorganized rabble, unable to match the discipline and skill of the Persian army. He was wrong. The Muslims, though fewer in number, were united by their faith and their commitment to the cause of Islam. They fought with a ferocity and determination that caught the Persians by surprise. 3 days into the battle, the Muslims faced a moment of crisis. The Persians launched a massive counterattack, their elephants trampling the battlefield and their knights charging with devastating force. The Muslim lines wavered, and for a moment it seemed as if the Persians might break through. According to Al-Tabari, it was at this critical juncture that Abu Ubayda ibn al-Jarrah, may Allah be pleased with him, demonstrated his true leadership. He rallied his men, reminding them of their duty to Allah and the Prophet, peace be upon him. "Stand firm, brothers," he urged them. "Allah is with us. Do not let the enemy see fear in your eyes, for we fight in the name of Allah, and He will grant us victory." His words galvanized the Muslims. They redoubled their efforts, pushing back against the Persian onslaught with renewed vigor. The tide of the battle began to turn. The Persians, despite their numbers, were unable to withstand the relentless pressure of the Muslim forces. Their lines began to crumble, and their commanders struggled to maintain control. The Battle of al-Qadisiyyah was won. The Persian Empire, which had dominated the region for centuries, was defeated. The Muslims, though outnumbered and outarmed, had triumphed through their faith, their unity, and their strategic brilliance. The victory opened the gates of Iraq to the Muslim forces, paving the way for the spread of Islam in the East. But even as the Muslims celebrated their victory, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. The Persian commander, Rostam Farrakhzad, though defeated, was not yet broken. He retreated to the fortress of Jalula, where he gathered the remnants of his army and prepared for one last stand. The Muslims, exhausted from their victory at al-Qadisiyyah, now faced the prospect of another battle, this time against an enemy who was desperate and dangerous. One question remained. Could the Muslims overcome this final challenge and secure their place in history? With 30,000 Muslim warriors against 100,000 Persian forces, Abu Ubayda ibn al-Jarrah faced an impossible decision. The fertile lands of Iraq stretched before him, rich with crops and vital supplies. The Persian Empire, under the command of General Hormuz, had retreated to Jalula after their devastating defeat at al-Qadisiyyah. But their numbers were vast, and their intention to regain their lost territories was clear. As Al-Tabari recorded in his Tarikh al-Rusul wa al-Muluk, Abu Ubayda stood at the crossroads of strategy. His commanders urged him to burn the fields, to deny the Persians the resources they would need to regroup and strike again. It was a tactic used by many before him, a scorched earth policy designed to weaken the enemy. But Abu Ubayda hesitated. He knew the impact such a decision would have on the local population, on the farmers and their families who had already endured so much. Ibn al-Athir notes in al-Kamil fi al-Tarikh that Abu Ubayda gathered his advisors. Among them were the seasoned commanders Khalid ibn al-Walid and Amr ibn al-As. both of whom had proven their brilliance on the battlefield. The debate was fierce. Some argued that the immediate threat of the Persian army outweighed the long-term consequences of burning the fields. Others, however, shared Abu Ubaida's concerns for the civilian population. Abu Ubaida's mind was made up. He refused to burn the fields. "We are not here to destroy," he declared. "We are here to build, to bring justice and mercy." The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught us to treat our enemies with kindness when we have the power to do otherwise. His decision was rooted in his deep faith and his unwavering commitment to the principles of Islam. The strategic challenge was immense. The Persian army was vast, and their reinforcements continued to pour in from the east. Abu Ubayda knew that he had to weaken them without resorting to tactics that would harm the innocent. He ordered his men to fortify their positions and prepare for a prolonged campaign. Scouts were sent out to gather intelligence on the Persian movements, and supply lines were secured to ensure that the Muslim army would not be caught off guard. According to al-Tabari, Abu Ubaida's decision to spare the fields of Iraq had an unexpected effect. The local population, seeing the mercy and justice of the Muslim army, began to support them. Farmers provided food and supplies, and information about Persian movements flowed freely. This support gave the Muslim army a significant advantage, allowing them to strike at the Persian forces with precision and effectiveness. The crisis came when the Persian army, bolstered by new reinforcements, launched a surprise attack. They aimed to cut off the Muslim supply lines and encircle Abu Ubaida's forces. The battle was fierce, and for a moment it seemed that the Persians might prevail. But Abu Ubaida remained calm, his faith unwavering. He rallied his men, reminding them of their duty to Allah and the Prophet, peace be upon him. The resolution came in a brilliant tactical maneuver. Abu Ubaida ordered a feigned retreat, luring the Persian forces into a carefully prepared ambush. As the Persians pursued, they found themselves trapped between the Muslim army and a series of fortified positions. The battle turned in an instant, and the Persian army was forced to retreat, leaving behind a trail of casualties and abandoned equipment. But the victory was not without its challenges. The Persian Empire was vast, and their desire for revenge was strong. As Abu Ubaida stood amidst the aftermath of the battle, a letter arrived. It bore the seal of the Byzantine emperor, and its contents would change the course of the campaign forever. With the Byzantine Empire amassing 100,000 soldiers at Yarmouk, Abu Ubayda ibn al-Jarrah faced a monumental challenge. The future of the Muslim conquest of Syria hung in the balance. As Ibn al-Athir recorded in Al-Kamil fi al-Tarikh, the Byzantine forces were not merely an army but a vast, disciplined war machine, ready to crush the Muslim advance. The stakes were clear. If the Muslim army failed at Yarmouk, the conquest of Syria would be set back for generations. The Byzantine Empire, with its vast resources and strategic depth, would regain the initiative. The cities of Syria, newly brought under Islamic rule, would face brutal reprisals. The very survival of the Muslim community in the region was at risk. Abu Ubaida, known for his wisdom and strategic acumen, understood the gravity of the situation. He had already proven his mettle in numerous battles, but Yarmouk was different. The Byzantine forces were led by skilled generals, including Vahan, a seasoned commander who had fought against the Persians and now turned his attention to the Muslims. The terrain of Yarmouk was also a factor. The plain was vast and open, ideal for the Byzantine cavalry to maneuver. The Muslims, outnumbered and facing a battle-hardened enemy, needed a strategy that would give them an edge. According to al-Tabari in al-Tarikh, al-Rusul war al-Muluk, Abu Ubayda convened a council of war with his commanders, including Khalid ibn al-Walid and Amr ibn al-As. The discussion was intense. Some suggested a defensive strategy, fortifying their positions and waiting for the Byzantines to make the first move. Others advocated for a surprise attack, aiming to catch the Byzantines off guard. Abu Ubayda, however, had a different plan. He recognized that the Byzantines' strength lay in their numbers and cohesion. To counter this, he decided to divide the Muslim army into smaller, more mobile units. This strategy, known as Tadkil al-Jaysh fi al-Jaysh, inserting the army within the army, aimed to create confusion and disrupt the Byzantine formations. The implementation of this strategy was fraught with challenges. The Muslim army was divided into several groups, each with a specific objective. Khalid ibn al-Walid was tasked with leading a flanking maneuver, while Amr ibn al-As was to engage the Byzantine center. The plan required precise coordination and a high degree of discipline. Any misstep could lead to disaster. As the battle unfolded, the Byzantines initially held the advantage. Their numbers and superior equipment allowed them to push back the Muslim forces. According to Ibn Kathir in al-Bidaya wa al-Nihaya, the Byzantines launched a series of devastating charges, aiming to break the Muslim lines. The situation grew dire. The Muslim army, though brave, was on the verge of being overwhelmed. Abu Ubayda, ever the steadfast leader, remained calm. He knew that the key to victory lay in maintaining the cohesion of his forces and ensuring that each unit executed its assigned role. The turning point came when Khalid ibn al-Walid successfully executed his flanking maneuver. As recorded by Ibn al-Athir, Khalid's forces struck the Byzantine left flank with such ferocity that the Byzantine lines began to waver. This disruption allowed Amr ibn al-As to press forward, engaging the Byzantine center with renewed vigor. The Byzantines, now facing attacks from multiple directions, started to lose their cohesion. The confusion spread, and the once disciplined Byzantine army began to falter. Abu Ubayda, seizing the moment, ordered a general advance. The Muslim forces, buoyed by the success of their strategy, pressed forward with unyielding determination. The Byzantines, unable to regroup, began to retreat. The Battle of Yarmouk had turned into a rout. The once mighty Byzantine army was in full retreat, leaving behind a trail of destruction and despair. However, the victory at Yarmouk was not without cost. The Muslim forces had suffered significant losses. The battlefield was littered with the fallen, a stark reminder of the price of victory. Abu Ubayda, ever mindful of the sacrifices made, took a moment to reflect. He knew that the battle was won, but the war was far from over. The Byzantine Empire, though defeated, would not give up easily. The threat of a counterattack loomed large. As the dust settled, a new challenge emerged. Reports began to surface of Byzantine reinforcements gathering in the north. The empire, despite its recent defeat, was preparing for another confrontation. The Muslims, though victorious, knew that they had to remain vigilant. The future of Syria hung in the balance, and the next battle would be crucial. With only 300 warriors against an empire of 300,000, Abu Ubayda ibn al-Jarrah stood at the precipice of history. The Byzantine forces, swollen with reinforcements from across their vast dominion, had gathered like a storm outside the walls of Antioch. The fate of the Levant, and perhaps the very survival of the Muslim conquest, hung in the balance. As Ibn al-Athir recorded, the Byzantine Emperor Heraclius had mustered an army unlike any seen since the days of Caesar. From the distant lands of Africa to the shores of Greece, soldiers had been summoned to defend the heart of their empire. The city of Antioch, with its towering walls and strategic position, was their anchor. If the Muslims were to be repulsed here, the momentum of their conquest would shatter. The lands they had liberated would be lost, and the dream of a unified Ummah stretching from Madinah to the Mediterranean would be extinguished. The Muslim commander studied the Byzantine positions carefully. Their forces were arrayed in a vast semicircle around the city, their flanks anchored on the mountains to the east and the Mediterranean to the west. The Byzantines had dug deep trenches and erected formidable earthworks, a clear sign of their intent to hold the ground at any cost. But Abu Ubayda saw an opportunity. The Muslims had the advantage of speed and surprise. The Byzantines, despite their numbers, were burdened by their own size. Their supply lines stretched for hundreds of miles, and their commanders were divided by rivalries and rival loyalties. Abu Ubayda gathered his officers, a council of the most trusted and experienced warriors in the Ummah. Among them were Shurabil ibn Hassana, who had proven his mettle at the Battle of Yarmouk, and Yahya ibn Abi Sufyan, a man whose strategic brilliance was matched only by his unwavering faith. The commander laid out his plan. The Muslims would not engage the Byzantines in open battle. Instead, they would strike at the heart of the Byzantine supply lines, cutting off their food, water, and reinforcements. It was a daring strategy, one that relied on precision, speed, and a deep understanding of the land. But as the plan was set in motion, doubt crept in. According to Al-Tabari, scouts returned with grim news. The Byzantines had anticipated the Muslim maneuver and had set traps along the supply routes. Worse still, a contingent of the Byzantine army had broken off from the main force and was marching to intercept the Muslim raiding parties. Abu Ubayda found himself at a crossroads. Should he press forward with his plan and risk being trapped, or should he retreat and abandon the campaign? The weight of the decision was crushing. In that moment of crisis, Abu Ubayda turned to Allah. He performed istikhara, seeking guidance through prayer and reflection. The answer came not in a dream, but in the steadfastness of his own heart. He remembered the words of the Prophet, peace be upon him, who had said, "The strong man is not the one who overcomes the people by his strength, but the one who controls himself while in anger." Abu Ubayda knew that true strength lay not in the number of soldiers, but in the righteousness of their cause and the trust they placed in Allah. With renewed resolve, Abu Ubayda adjusted his strategy. He ordered his forces to split into smaller units, each tasked with harrying the Byzantine supply lines from different directions. The Byzantines, expecting a single, concentrated assault, were caught off guard. Their counters were too slow, too predictable. The Muslim forces moved like shadows, striking and vanishing before the Byzantines could react. Food, weapons, and reinforcements were cut off. The Byzantine army, once a mighty force, began to wither. The resolution of Abu Ubayda's plan was swift and decisive. As Ibn al-Athir recorded, the Byzantine forces, starved of supplies and besieged by the relentless Muslim attacks, began to crumble. Morale collapsed. Rivalries among the Byzantine commanders flared into open conflict. The once unassailable empire was fracturing from within. The Muslims, sensing victory, pressed their advantage. Antioch, the jewel of the Byzantine Empire, stood on the brink of fall. But as the dust settled and the echoes of battle faded, a new threat loomed on the horizon. A messenger arrived from the north, his face etched with urgency. The news he bore was grim. A fresh Byzantine army, even larger than the one before, was marching toward Antioch. The Emperor Heraclius, it seemed, was not yet ready to surrender his empire. The Byzantine Empire, facing catastrophic defeat after the Battle of Yarmouk, urgently assembled a new force of 120,000 soldiers, a desperate bid to reclaim their lost territories. Meanwhile, the Muslim army, though triumphant, was divided, with 24,000 men under the command of Abu Ubayda ibn al-Jarrah, and another 7,000 under the leadership of Amr ibn al-As. The fate of the region hung in the balance, for if the Byzantines succeeded in their counterattack, the hard-won victories of the Muslims could be undone. The strategic challenge was immense. The Byzantines outnumbered the Muslims by a margin of nearly 6-1, and their forces were bolstered by fresh reinforcements and a fierce determination to avenge their losses. Abu Ubayda, ever the strategist, knew that direct confrontation would be disastrous. As Ibn al-Athir recorded in Al-Kamil fi al-Tarikh, Abu Ubayda gathered his top commanders for a secret council. The stakes were clear. Failure would mean the retreat of the Muslim forces from Syria and the loss of all the gains they had achieved. The Byzantines had chosen the city of Antioch as their stronghold, a fortified city with high walls and a strategic location. The Muslims had to outmaneuver them, to find a way to strike where the enemy was weakest. Abu Ubayda, with his deep understanding of warfare and his unwavering trust in Allah, devised a plan. He knew that the Byzantines would expect a direct assault, so he decided to attack a nearby town, Azaz, to draw their forces out and away from the safety of Antioch's walls. The strategy was risky, but it was their best chance. According to al-Tabari, Abu Ubayda paused before issuing his orders. Scouts had reported that the Byzantines were moving more troops to Antioch, making the city even more heavily defended. The weight of the decision pressed upon him, but his faith in Allah's guidance never wavered. He chose to proceed with the plan, trusting in Allah's wisdom and power. The Muslims attacked Azaz with precision and ferocity. The Byzantines, as anticipated, rushed to the town's defense, leaving Antioch relatively undefended. Abu Ubayda then ordered a swift march back to Antioch, where the remaining Byzantine forces were caught off guard. The city fell swiftly, and with it, the momentum of the Byzantine counterattack was broken. The tactic worked, but the Byzantines were not yet defeated. News soon came of another Byzantine army marching from the north, a force of 50,000 soldiers determined to reclaim Syria. The battle for the region was far from over.